I was a sales rep. I sold scuba diving equipment. I was putting a lot of effort in. I wasn't really getting more momentum. I wasn't really getting more orders. I was seeing some other sales reps coming in, sometimes with dodgy sort of approaches, and then they got a big deal out of them. I wanted to be better at what I was doing, wanted more results, but I didn't want to lie or cheat or deceive. I loved it. Behavioral science, the research behind it, which is fascinating, interesting, eye-opening, and sometimes terrifying. To get more yeses from people, you don't have to lie or cheat. You just need to raise the right pieces of information to the surface, and then it just sort of happens. And yeah, I had big successes with it. I was converted forever. I still have that passion.
Persuasion is a skill that opens doors in business and in a job search. Your ability to persuade influences whether you get the interview or whether you get hired or whether you get a yes for something else that's important in your life. I sat down with today's guest. His name is Patrick Vandenberg, and he's a business partner of Dr. Robert Cialdini, author of a $7 million bestseller called Influence, which is widely considered one of the most important business books ever written, y'all. Patrick is a Cialdini licensed trainer who has taught the science of persuasion since 2000, and he breaks it down in a way that's easy to understand and professional to use. So if you want to understand how persuasion really works and how to use it ethically and effectively, this is a must listen for you. Patrick, welcome into the Insiders Career Club podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Very excited to be here. We had a little pre-chat and we got along like a house on fire. So I've been looking forward to this.
All right. So I'd like to start by asking you, what attracted you to the study of persuasion?
I guess what set me up, I was a sales rep before the turn of the century. Goodness, I'm old. And I sold scuba diving equipment for a wholesaler. I would visit retailers in 3 of Australia's states, which is quite an area. So I had my Ford Falcon station wagon and cassette tapes going, the rolling university sort of concept. And I was putting a lot of effort in. But I don't know if that's arrogance, but it felt like I wasn't really getting more momentum with them, as I wasn't getting more share of their retail pie in terms of, there's other brands they could choose from over me, let's say. And I was really supporting them, working really hard to have a good relationship. And the relationship was good, but I wasn't really getting more orders than I was sort of always getting. And I was seeing some other sales reps coming in, sometimes with dodgy sort of approaches, and then they got a big deal out of them. And I didn't like that. And so I wanted to be better at what I was doing, wanted more results, but I didn't want to lie or cheat or deceive either. And so at the time, a business coach was helping my boss to help him grow his business. And he identified that scuba diving retailers, they're lovely people, but they're in it because of the passion of diving. They're not necessarily great business operators. And so he came up with a concept to train us sales reps as sort of business coaches so we could help them grow their business. And then if we could help them double their business, then by definition, we would double with them, probably more. And so this gentleman, John McDonald, he was local to Melbourne, and I knew how much he charged per hour. And I don't know if you've ever been on holidays and you've invited a Dutch person, it's like, if you're ever in America, right, come, you can stay with that. Don't do that with Dutch people. They turn up, right? They'll change their whole travel plans just for a night free accommodation. And
Wow.
so anyway, John invited me to, if you're ever in Vermont, just drop by in the office. We can talk about the strategies and because he was training us to be business coaches and we were doing sales training with our retailers. And so I turned up but he actually liked that. And so he was lending me those educational sets with cassette tapes back then, and they were expensive. I mean, now you can buy that stuff so cheap. But then it was like $1,200 for a set of Brian Tracy CDs or something. And anyway, he was lending me this stuff, and in there, 2 cassette tapes from Dr. Robert Cialdini, and I loved it. Behavioral science, the research behind it, which is fascinating, interesting, eye-opening, and sometimes terrifying, but so interesting. And then you come to the realization that to get more yeses from people, to get more agreement, you don't have to lie or cheat. You just need to raise the right pieces of information to the surface, and then it just sort of happens if it's within them. You're not manipulating anybody, you're not forcing anybody to do anything they don't want, but it just, if it's within them that yes, it's able to come out. And yeah, I had big successes with it, and so yeah, I was converted forever. I loved it, and I still have that passion. I love explaining it to people, and it's the one thing today. Like, of course, it's you and me talking, but if I'm talking to an audience full of people, I can see those eyes get a little bit bigger as the time passes, and they go, "Are you serious? It's this simple?" And yeah, it sort of is. It's easy to understand. You just need to cultivate a habit of looking for it. So I'm very excited to share some of that with your audience today, and I hope those those eyes are getting a little bit bigger on the other end as well.
Hopefully, or their ears are opening up more. Would you share a moment when a persuasive communication changed the course of your life or your career?
I sort of taking me back again to, I think there was around the 2000s. I was still the sales rep, and I took on another brand that I was taking on, and that it was a brand for those who do scuba diving. This was a dry diving suit, meaning it seals on your neck and your wrists, keeps the rest of you dry, and you wear underneath whatever you want, depending on the water temperature. And I've used different type of suits like that in the past. In the Netherlands, I was part of the military. I did diving there and recreational. I'm an instructor, so I use a lot of those sort of suits. And this Australian-made suit, that were called Hot and Dry, they're still around, was honestly the best suit that I've ever used. And so I was really excited to pick them up. And I'm walking into my retailers with this brand, happy as Larry, going like, "Oh, look what I've picked up." And my retailers liked me with a good relationship. They laughed at me. "Hot and Dry, we're not touching that again, right? Have you picked up Wet and Steamy?" It's, "What are you talking about?" And then it turned out that the year before, I didn't know that, Hot and Dry had made a mistake. They had gone to a different manufacturer of the inner membrane material, and they had all delaminated, and they all leaked, and they all had to be replaced. And so my retailers are going, "You're a nice fella, but we're not touching that again." And so I had to use what I had, and so I dove into Dr. Cialdini's teachings and look for, all right, what's in that situation that I can bring to the surface. And to make a long story short, within 18 months, we were market leader with that suit, which is an enormous turnaround. And with nothing, again, nothing manipulative, just I was looking, okay, how can I help these people, which is reciprocity. I'm sure we'll dive into the principles in a few minutes. So I was helping people to help them grow their practice. I was offering to do dry suit trials in the swimming pool with them, right, to help them sell their clients. And if we sold something, they get the profit. So that would activate reciprocity. There was there was unity in there in terms of, where are you from in terms of location. If I was in Melbourne, then I would be telling Melbourne divers that I'm from Melbourne, just like you, right? Because then you get that favoritism. When you're in the airport somewhere and you meet someone who's from your hometown, all of a sudden it's like your best mates, like big smile. And if they tell you go and check out that restaurant, you actually go. Where if it's in your hometown and somebody says, "Oh, go out, check out that restaurant," then you go mind your own business, right? And then it's not special. So I was using all that to my advantage, and it worked very well.
Okay, okay. So, just so that everyone is clear, so how would you define persuasion, and how is it different from manipulation or sales? Because it is different, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I guess what we can put on the table straight away is that persuasion science can be used ethically and unethically. But what I'm delighted to report is that research shows that unethical use of persuasion science might produce short-term results, but it produces
Mm,
long-term disaster, because nobody comes back to a relationship, to a situation where they did not do well in the bargaining, in the arrangement, right? If you don't get what you were promised, or you figure out that you were lied to, you don't trust that person anymore. So it results in credibility craters. And so research shows that ethical use of persuasion produces both short and long-term success, right? You can outperform the unethical behavior, and certainly on the long term. So we want to use this ethically. Also, for those who are responsible for a team or have a business, there's actually costs associated to employing unethical practices, because most of us, we don't want to act unethically. There's something within us that doesn't like that, right? If we
Mhm.
can't get ahead in life without lying or cheating or doing bad to someone else, that doesn't sit well with us. It raises stress. You get increased sick leave. People leave your organization, so you lose good people, which of course costs a lot of money to find new people, train them. And then the people that don't mind being unethical, they hang around in your business and they steal the office furniture, walk
Yeah,
out with
grouse.
equipment, do deals by the side, right? So they're not necessarily the people you want in your organization either. So there's this cost to that. So yeah, we want to use this ethically. And how I often put it, by knowing persuasion science, you help to raise the facts, the piece of information to the surface that your audience wants and needs to hear from you. And maybe, Sindy, this might be a good time to sort of dive into the science of human decision making. How do people actually make
Okay, that
decisions?
was my next question. So you're right on time.
All right, awesome. Okay, so when it comes to decision making, I'm going to lean on the work of Professor Daniel Kahneman. He died last year in 2024, and he won a Nobel Prize in 2002 in economics, which is a little interesting because he was a behavioral scientist, professor in psychology and behavioral scientist, and he wins a Nobel Prize in economics. So, yeah, what does somebody figure out that's such a big impact on economics from psychology and behavioral science? So he disproved a popular belief that old economics used to have. Old economics thought that people are logical, rational creatures, and we would therefore use logic and reason to formulate our decisions. And Daniel Kahneman proved that that's incorrect. He says, when it comes to decision making, your brain, your audience's brain, has two parts: system one and system two. System one is fast. It's an unconscious brain. It works automatically, and it works outside our conscious control. And it works most of the time, or you could say all the time, always listening in the background, processing information. System one can read a short headline on a billboard. System one can drive a car on an empty road. You know, when you sometimes come home and you can't remember what turnoff you took from the freeway? That's because you weren't driving, system one was.
Okay.
So system one can take quick decisions, but it works a lot on shortcuts. So for example, expensive equals good, right? If I don't know anything about this particular thing I want to purchase, a service or a product, I could delay my decision. I could go to the library and I could start reading books for a few months and do courses for another few months. And then 5 months later, I'd be in good shape to make a well-educated decision, but I don't really have the time for that. So the rule, expensive equals good, affords me a shortcut, a path to a quicker decision. If I just spend a little bit more than I was planning to, chances are I'll get something better, right? And we all know that that's true most of the time. Inevitably not true all the time. Sometimes you buy something that's more expensive, it's still rubbish, but
Mhm.
most of the time it works for us. And so it's very attractive for us to, instead of investing a lot of time researching, we could make a quicker decisions. And so other shortcuts are, for example, if a lot of other people are doing it, it must be the right thing to do, right?
Ah,
Right? When you're
okay.
standing on a train platform in a foreign country and you can't hear the announcements over the speakers, and all of a sudden everybody starts walking to one end of the station, you don't stand still. You go with them, right?
Yeah.
Because if a lot of other people are doing it, that must be the right course of action. So system one works on shortcuts. On the other hand, we have system two. So system two is our logical brain. Now, system two works slow, takes a lot of effort to run System 2, and Daniel Kahneman calls it the lazy controller. It doesn't actually want to engage unless it's forced to. It's quite happy for System 1 to come up with suggestions, and if no red flags go up, happy to go with that. So System 2 has a caveat. It requires our attention to work properly. And this is where we bump into problems because our attention span is getting shorter. In the 80s, we had an attention span of 20 minutes. You probably have heard those stories about the famous goldfish having an attention span of 9 seconds. Our attention span is now 7 seconds.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know
right.
it's
7 seconds,
short.
right?
No, it's shorter. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is that when and Daniel Kahneman demonstrates back in 2002 that 90% of our decisions is made by System 1. Subconsciously, automatically, outside our conscious control. And later research suggests that that's now 95% or even more. And this explains a few things. People, especially people in sales that have been in the same industry for a long period of time, that all say the same thing. Selling seems to be getting harder. I didn't used to make or have to make this many proposals to get this little amount of yeses. Right? It's getting more difficult. And that makes perfect sense. Because if you don't know the science, when we think about how are we going to convince someone, and I mean, we've mentioned sales a few times because that's where this skill is obviously popular because it brings money in the till, but it's not just sales related. It is for anything where you're trying to achieve goals where other people are involved. And to some extent, even yourself, internal dialogue can have an effect on you. So it is all leadership. It is how you manage your teams, how you get your ideas accepted by those above you in the hierarchy or below you in the hierarchy. It's customer service. It's getting the bills paid on time. It's dealing with your suppliers, government, negotiations, all this stuff. It's all persuasion. And so when we're thinking there, how am I going to convince that other person about whatever it is I'm trying to convince them about? You're using conscious thought, and that's System 2. And System 2 has a habit to come up with the types of information that needs System 2 in the other person to process it. And our audience doesn't have the time for that anymore. And so we cause more uncertainty in them. And some of the arguments we use, they're so rational. It's good for the environment. It gets you there quicker. It saves you money, right? All rational reasons. But none of those things qualify as a shortcut that System 1 can use to go, you know what, that's probably good enough for me. Let's do that. I was doing a talk not too long ago for Westpac, which is one of the major banks over here. And we were talking about, the actions of others. And one of the bankers said to me, he says, I now realize something that has happened to me a couple of times. He says, when we talk, because that department deals with doctors and lending for them and mortgages. And so he says, at some point, we come to the point where people need to decide between a fixed or a variable home loan rate. And so normally, he says, when I get to that point, I have to spend quite a long time to explain what the exact differences are between a fixed rate or a variable rate home loan. And it costs a lot of time. He says, but sometimes I've noticed, I've told the doctor on the other end of the telephone that, what type of loan do you want? It's interesting that 9 out of 10 of the loans that we've written lately, all the other doctors are all choosing for variable rate options. And he says, and then the doctors go, if they do so, that's good enough for me. Let's move on. Decision made.
Interesting.
Right? Because there was a little piece of information there that qualified as a shortcut for System 1. It was like expensive equals good, or in this case, if a lot of other people are doing it, it must be the right
Somebody
course.
did the research somewhere, so I'm just going to rely on that. Yeah.
Exactly. So we need to raise the pieces of information that allow people to make a quicker, easier decision. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. When I taught young people how to go in and find jobs, and actually even older people to go in and interview well, you've got 5 seconds to make a good first impression, right? It's probably less than that now, if that was the case 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So I'm wondering what it is now, how much time you actually have. It's probably from the time you walk in the door, the way you look and the way you shake somebody's hand, they get a feeling about you.
There's a lot of truth to that, especially when people are uncertain. They lean more heavily on these shortcuts. And it's interesting you say, how you shake someone's hands and how you look. That's
Mhm.
absolutely true. There's research that demonstrates that if people applying for a job, going into an interview, let's say, if they were wearing branded clothing that, we assume costs more money,
Mhm.
they were hired more quickly and they got offered higher starting wages.
Yeah, it's very true. You gotta look the part. You gotta play the game, and, that's all part of it.
You got to
Yeah.
dress to impress, but you don't want to get you want to use this ethically. So you don't want to go hire an Armani suit when you don't own one, right? As in, you want to
Yeah.
look at in your wardrobe, what is it you're comfortable wearing? How do you present yourself your best way? Right. And then you're
Mhm.
comfortable. And then, because of course, let's say you had the Armani suit, you get the job and you never turn up in that suit again. And they go, that's a little odd, right? Now it starts working against you. But yeah, you do wanna, portray yourself the best possible way.
Absolutely.
Shall I dive into the principles of persuasion?
You are right on schedule with my questions, Patrick.
I know sometimes I've got a whole hour and I can relax a little bit, but I know we wanna keep this on pace for people, so it's all nice and
Yeah,
quick
we
and
do.
digestible.
Yeah, to be kind to their attention spans. So, I was gonna ask you to give me a thumbnail highlight of the 7 universal principles of effective persuasion.
Okay, great. So I'll give you a quick rundown and then you cherry pick what you want me to dive a little bit in more afterwards if we can. So there's 7 universal principles of persuasion. And just for those also listening, social influence or ethical persuasion, which is the same thing, is a very much in-demand skill now. Cashnet did a study which was published by Forbes that looked at 17 million job listings on Indeed.com, and number 3 was persuasion. Number 2 was negotiation skills, for which I would argue you need to be persuasive, and number 4 was presentation skills, for which you also need to be persuasive. So 3 out of the top 4 skills lean on this particular soft skill. So very important to know more about. So there's 7 principles of persuasion, and they are universal principles. Why do we highlight that? They work in all cultures, in all languages, and all countries. That's incredibly powerful, meaning, in our societies, we're a nice mix of different cultures, right? So it works across everybody in your country, but it's also much easier now also to work with people in other countries. And so this is something that works everywhere, which is very handy. All right, so the 7 principles.
Yep.
Reciprocity, and all these words you've heard of before, right? But all these principles of activators and amplifiers, which there's no way we're going to cover that in a quick podcast, but I just want to highlight, you've probably heard them before and you might think, oh yeah, I know how that works. Yeah, maybe you understand the concept of it, but the chances are you don't know what the activators and amplifiers are, and you're not consistently and successfully using it. So you're still losing time and resources and success without that. So reciprocity is one of them. People feel an obligation to give back the same type of behavior that was first given to them. If I invite you to my birthday party, well, then you should invite me to yours. If you do me a favor, then I owe you
Never
a favor.
Mhm.
And in the context of compliance, people say yes more readily to people that they feel they owe something to. And so we want to do good to other people. We want to help other people. And most businesses have understood that message, but also many completely missed the boat, as in they missed the mark in terms of implementing it. They're investing in what they think will activate reciprocity, and it doesn't actually. And a classic example of that is the free downloadable ebook on somebody's website, right? Oh, we have a wonderful ebook. Just put your name in, email address. We'll send you the download link. Our gift to you. Nice try. It is not activating reciprocity, because a gift is something that's given without a requirement needing to be met. In the case of the ebook, it was name and email address first,
No.
then we'll
We
send
have
you the download link.
transformation. No.
It was a reward. It wasn't a gift. People feel they paid for it with their email address. And so it might be a nice lead generator, but it won't activate reciprocity. And so next time when you come and say, hey, I've got an event on, do you want to join us? We have a webinar on. That action is not going to activate reciprocity for more people to jump onto that. All right, so reciprocity, there's a lot more to it, but I'll move on. Liking is another principle. People like to deal with people that they like. It's not rocket science. A deeper insight in that is that people like to deal with people who they know like them, right? In sales, we're often taught if you want to convince someone to buy something, listen to you, then you need to be likable. And that's not incorrect, but it's more powerful if you're trying to sell me something that I get the feeling that you really like me. Because if you like me, you're going to look after me, right? I'm safe with you. Liking, we also like people that like us and say so. Right? So we like praise and compliments, right? The fastest way to get in somebody's good books is to make a genuine compliment. And a little cute little insight, if you're in a situation where it's awkward to pay a compliment, let's say you're in a meeting with the boss there and all your colleagues, and you think like, well, looks like I'm trying to suck up a little bit onto the boss. Wait until after the meeting and tell the boss's receptionist the compliment, because people love being associated to good news, and that compliment left with the receptionist is in,
It's gonna run it and tell her.
I love the new project or the new sort of venture we're going on, right? That news will circle its way back to the boss Sally, and it's a compliment behind someone's back works very well. Similarities is also part of liking. So we like people that are like us. So it's important to try and figure out what somebody values, what their interests are, and see if you genuinely have things in common and let that come to the surface. All right, moving on. So principle of unity we could cover next, which was the last principle to actually be introduced. Unity is often confused with liking because it's a little bit about similarities, but it comes from a different sort of place. It's about feeling part of a community that we share. It's where when we can talk about us as we. For example, I ride motorcycles. If somebody figures out that, oh, you ride motorcycle as well, we already like each other more.
Yeah, you got a whole different world, a whole different level.
We've got that. We greet each other on the road. If somebody's got trouble with their bike, we pull over, see if we can help them. So it could also be, you go to a sports event or something, right? Everybody gets dressed up in the colors, right? You're part of that community. Team wins, you say, we won, right? Because you feel part of it. So that's unity.
Right.
Part of unity is also co-creation. When we work together with someone to develop something, make something, could be putting a proposal together, could be asking someone, for me to deliver to you what it is you're really going to love. What would you advise that we put into this proposal, right? Now you're working together to come up with ideas. You have more ownership of it, and so that activates unity. Social proof is probably one of the most well-known principles. A lot of business owners will collect reviews, especially online reviews. 98% of online shoppers say that detailed online reviews are important with their decision on where and what to buy. So it is important to collect those things and share them with our audience. But if you think that reviews is something powerful that you should not be missing out on, then you should know that social proof has a lot more to offer than just testimonials. But with social proof, we follow the actions of others, especially when we are uncertain, when the others are numerous, and when they're similar to us. Next principle, authority. So authority is about the fact that we follow the advice of people who have genuinely more knowledge and wisdom about a particular topic, which makes sense because we can't know everything, right? And so if there's somebody in the room that knows more about this thing than we do, it makes sense to follow their advice. And so expert opinions that you can bring into your persuasive argument. Let's say, well, we've got this doctor saying that, and that doctor saying that, and this engineer saying that, right? That helps to get your point across. But it's also about getting your credentials across. So if you meet someone face to face, then you have lost the opportunity to raise your credentials to the surface. Because, if I met you in a room and say, hi, I'm Patrick, let me tell you the 35 reasons why you should listen to me, right? Even your subconscious at least is going to go, you're full of yourself, right? We lose on authority and we lose on liking. It's lose-lose. So you can't do that. You have to arrange to have your credentials raised before that time. And so, when I'm standing on stage and I'm speaking, then there's an MC that comes on and introduces the next speaker, which in that case is me. If you are in a business meeting, and this is one of the easiest things to do within an organization, right? If you've got, let's say, a client coming in and you hand someone over to another person in the organization, you should know some thoughtful details about your colleague, right? Let's say, I'm going to pass you over to Michael. Michael's been with us for 17 years and he's won multiple awards with the work that he does. And he's helped so many clients to find the right service for them. Right now, Michael's credentials are already up before he even opens his mouth. And so you can do that for each other. So you can't introduce yourself, but anybody else can do it, even people within your own organization. So the receptionist, colleagues, that's perfectly socially acceptable. So that's authority. And I should say authority is also about believability. How is what you say actually believed? Then we have the principle of consistency. So consistency works on the fact that we feel an internal pressure to stay true with past actions and statements that we've made. Maybe you've used this on one of your friends or family before. You might say, do you, because you want to go on a mountain biking trip on the weekend or something, right? Something active. And you might ask someone, do you consider yourself an adventurous person? And most people do, actually. Most people think they're adventurous and they're very creative, right? Do you think you're an adventurous person? Yeah, I'm very adventurous. Oh, that's awesome. I'm going on a mountain biking thing on Saturday. Do you want to come with me? It's no harder to say no, right? Because I've just told you I'm an adventurous person. So we need to arrange for people to give them an opportunity to reveal to us what's important to them, what they value. And then when afterwards we can come with a suggestion, a proposal that is in line with what they value, which I would say is highly ethical, then it is harder to say yes to that. But if we don't get them to reveal that earlier on, then it's easier to say no. So that's consistency. And then lastly, scarcity, which intuitively a lot of us, of course, know about. We value things more when they seem less available or their availability is questionable. So, of course, we got sales on Black Friday sales, right? This can lead to irrational behavior. We come home with stuff that we probably didn't really want. And interestingly, scarcity, it makes us value things more, but it doesn't make us experience the use of that product or service better than it is. It's only our perception of value that changes. A common mistake people make in business is to explain to people what they stand to benefit from moving in their direction. As in, you get there faster, you save money. That's what I gain from using your product or service, where research shows you can easily be twice more motivated or twice more persuasive if you don't mention what they will gain, but instead if you point out what they will not get if they don't move in your direction.
Okay, can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so let's say you've got a website, right? And you've got a text, and then you talk about what it is you're selling, your product or your service. And so you might say, "Oh, we use the latest technology, and we make sure it functions in a way that it saves you money, is more energy efficient, and it's the latest style, so it looks very pretty in your home." Let's say, right? So those are all ways of saying what you stand to gain from getting this item. Where what you could say is that if you don't get this, you will lose money because you still have something of the older generation that uses a lot more power. You've got a model that doesn't really signal that you're a trendsetter, right? You're more modern, let's say. You're still working with antiquated sort of stuff, right? So you're explaining what people don't get if they don't move in your direction. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh, it does. Okay. If you would go back to social influence, because I think that's one that people can relate to right now and understand a little better. And especially since, they hear the social, they think media, whatever, but it has a deeper meaning than that. So talk about that a little bit more.
Sorry, what do you mean with social aspect? As in with other people, or?
Just period. If you're talking about the principles, just delve into what social influence means and how someone can gain it, especially at work.
Yeah, so social influence is basically the same as ethical persuasion. So it's about our ability to get our point across. And so the World Economic Forum recently raised social influence to the number 3 priority for businesses to develop in their workforce, because I reckon because of the introduction of AI, things are getting a little bit more uncertain, and it is our interpersonal skills that are becoming more valuable. So when we're talking to our team members, when we're talking to the managers, we want to follow our mission, or if we're trying to apply for a job, if we're in customer service, if we're trying to get the bills paid on time, our ability to communicate in a way for us to achieve what we set out to do, that becomes more and more valuable. So, from the social aspect, it applies everywhere, because everywhere where we're trying to achieve a goal, this is important. But yeah, so it doesn't just have to be sales related. It's a lot wider than that.
Mm, okay. Okay. Which principle of persuasion would you say is the most important to use?
I love that question. I definitely have a favorite. And I don't know why, but I like the principle of authority, because not in a sneaky way, but authority is the one that we often have no idea that it has an impact on us. And I've got a great study where they had a car pull up to a traffic light that had turned red, and then the traffic light turns green, and the car doesn't pull away. It doesn't drive on. And so the question is, what does the car behind it do? Right? And so half of the time, this is an older economy car that does this behavior. What does the car behind it do? The other half of the time, it's a luxury car. What does the person do behind it? Well, when it was the economy car, nearly every single person behind them honked the horn to even push the rear bumper, right? But when it was the luxury car, less than half of the people honked the horn and nobody pushed the rear bumper. Now, when you present that case to people in theory, say, listen, what would you do, right? There's a car in front of you that doesn't pull away. If it's an older car or a luxury car, when would you honk the horn more readily? Most people, especially men, will go, oh, I would honk the horn more readily at the luxury car, right? As in, a bit of arrogance. And we know that the data doesn't support that. It's the other way around. So we often don't realize how authority acts on us. And I've always liked that about authority. But you asked which is the most important principle or most powerful one to use. And that depends on the situation. Because I would argue that there's 3 components to getting compliance from someone. You need a good relationship, right? If somebody's not returning your emails, you don't have a good relationship, right? So
Mhm.
it's no use trying to motivate them with scarcity when the relationship isn't there. So if you get signals that the relationship needs strengthening or repairing, you need to work on principles that do that. If the relationship is good, but your audience is uncertain about what it is you're actually offering or uncertain about if it's right for them, right? And
Mm.
that's often like in sales, you would get objections like, oh, it's too expensive, or it's not, the timing isn't right for us, right? They're just not certain. And so there's other principles like social proof that help to reduce uncertainty. When the relationship is strong and people, they love the product, they love the service, or they love you as a person, but they're not buying it or they're not hiring you, the motivation is lacking. And so now you need to motivate to action. So there's other principles for that, like scarcity. So it depends a little bit on the situation. So we need to be detectives. We need to know what the principles do. Then we need to look at the situation. What do we need? What do we need to build on? And then we need to find what information is naturally there in the situation and then bring that to the surface to let it do its work.
Quite interesting. I'm looking at our time and we are getting very close to max. So I do want to ask you, Vanna. It's been a very interesting conversation, Patrick, especially since, you go, oh, persuasion, oh, it's this, is this. But when you think about it and hearing you talk, it's not just the one thing. It's looking at the whole picture and understanding where people are and what might be their barriers to saying yes to you. And it's quite fascinating, quite fascinating. Now, I know,
Yeah, and it's entertaining.
yeah, it is. Now, I know that you do free trainings. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've got my own podcast, as you know, which started only recently. It's Ethical Persuasion Unlocked. And so I would encourage anybody to start with episode one, which will highlight to you what it is you're realizing, the successes that you're not getting. It'll help you realize that. And then the second episode goes much deeper into the science of human decision making, which you'll find fascinating, and sort of take it from there. So that's a great way to learn some stuff. But people also need to know that nobody really learns or masters a skill from listening to podcasts or even reading a book, right? We lose an awful lot of information within 7 days. Actually, research now says that 7 days we lose 90% of new information if there's no follow-up. So it's great to get excited, take a strategy, and I'd love for nothing more for people to learn something from today and implement it and benefit from it. But to learn this properly, you're going to have to do some formal training. So the podcast is great. I've got a downloadable ebook on my website. No name or email address required. Just right click and download. But yeah, ethicalpersuasion.com.au, because I'm in Australia. There's also a 7-day email challenge that you can sign up for. Of course, for that, we do need the email address. And you get a little nugget of persuasion gold in your inbox every day. And then, beyond that, of course, I teach this stuff. So I've got our flagship training runs over about 8 weeks, which is just an investment of about 20 hours. Other than that, I have online workshops. So people from anywhere in the world can join that. It's a very low-cost way to sort of introduce yourself to this. And other than that, if you like reading, of course, Dr. Cialdini's book, Influence, is considered one of the best business books of all time. So that should definitely be in your library. And my own book that I wrote with some of my colleagues, How to Hear Yes More Often, is a nice complement to that. So especially if you go and buy Dr. Cialdini's book online, a nice combination to buy that with our book along with it, which has a more practical approach to it.
Right. Okay. Want to say your website one more time. I will put it in the show notes as well as some other links, but why don't you share it with us one more time and then give us the title of your book again and where they can find it online, if it's at Amazon or wherever it is.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the website is ethicalpersuasion.com.au. The podcast is called Ethical Persuasion Unlocked. So you can find that where you find your podcasts. And the book is called How to Hear Yes More Often. And that you can buy from any of your favorite online retailers.
All right. Patrick, it's been my delight to speak with you today and to have you share more about what ethical persuasion is. And I know that if people are really interested, they can find a lot more information and get involved in maybe take some trainings. So I appreciate that, as well as all of your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Take care. Okay, I'm going to describe someone, and I want to know if it reminds you of someone. Maybe you. You've been looking for a job for a while. You're a strong leader with years of experience, but your job search is stalled. You're frustrated. You're not getting interviews, or maybe you are getting interviews, and the interviews that you're receiving, you're not doing a good job in them. You walk away, and they didn't go as you expected. Now, each time this happens, it chips away at your confidence. You're losing valuable time, and you're scared. Scared that you're going to have to settle for a job that's beneath your capabilities. If this is you, you need clarity. Now, if you want a resume and a LinkedIn profile that finally sound like you, that come across clear, confident, and differentiated. If you want to do if you want to do interviews where you can speak about your leadership, impact, and strengths without second-guessing yourself. Or maybe you want recruiters reaching out because your positioning is sharp and compelling and draws them in. What about doing a job search that feels structured instead of scattered, strategic, and aligned with your goals? If you're ready for that kind of clarity, contact me on LinkedIn and put in the keyword clarity, and I'll reach out to you and we'll figure out what next steps are, okay? Now, I want to thank you for listening because your support's a blessing. Now, if you enjoyed the podcast, give us a positive rating on Apple. And remember, new podcasts are released every 2 weeks on the first and third Wednesdays. And share this with your friends, please. Now, before you go, let's speak victory over you. No matter what it feels like, you've got a bright future. Good breaks are looking for you, and new doors are about to open. But one thing you have to do is to believe it. Believe it, believe it, believe it. Now, until next time, take care.